Hi guys, I'm making a video for you guys on understanding where to locate oil pressure issues in an LS motor. LS motors are prone to have various oil pressure issues, and a lot of times it's hard to find them. But this video kind of covers all the different aspects of where to look for the oil pressure problem you're having maybe in your motor. Real quick, I'll outline just a few. Oil pressure sender unit, O-ring on the pickup tube, the oil pump itself, the relief valve in the oil pump, cam bearings, a big one. Cam bearings walk out of the blocks. And then there's also a few other odds and ends, very rare things like leaving out the dog bone in the back of a block on a rebuild. Call it the dog bone. Basically, it's a oil diverter valve. But anyway, there is some very interesting things in this video that will help you understand and diagnose where to go and find your oil pressure issue. Hope this helps, guys. Okay, just doing a video here on this, I think it's 05 Chevy 2500 with the 6-liter in it. Classic low oil pressure condition. You'll see this with a lot of LS engines. And I want to show you guys the process of elimination that you should take to find it. And finding it is critical. So the pumps on these, as you know, can be weak. And what happens is the relief valve can get stuck in the up position, which will let oil pressure bypass, and you can ruin a motor that way. So oil pumps are always a suspect. I tend to check that. I also check some other things. The sender in the back of the motor on the block, that is obviously, I don't have one to show you here, but it can be a problem as well. They just go faulty. But when you scope a motor, cheap set of scopes, Harbor Freight, something like that, when it's running, scope it on the pan, get underneath it. I'm on the lift here. But what you'll find is you'll hear a little different noise in there. And when I hear that little noise, I know what to look for. And so I drop the pan, I drop the windage tray. And by dropping the windage tray as well as the pan, it takes a little bit of work. You gotta drop the front differential down if you got a 4x4. But you drop it down, then you can get up in here and you can see the underside of your motor, okay? So these are Gen 4 rods that I can tell by looking at them. But what am I looking at here? I want you guys to focus here what I find. And you can rotate the motor over and to get at different positions. But let's look right up in the center of the screen there. See if it'll focus. That is a cam bearing, and it's all beat up on the edge. And I found a couple chunks of metal in the pan too. Well, why is that cam bearing all chunked up like that? Well, this counterweight here on the right of the crank, as it goes around, the inner edge hits it up there. I do believe it gets close to that and just barely chips at it. Excuse me, that cam bearing does not belong there. You shouldn't be able to see it at all, okay, at all. That cam bearing has walked out and exposed the oil galley. So now you have a big leak right there in oil pressure. That is a big no-no. So I just saw that one there and I know that that's a fail, okay? Now let's see if we can look at another cam bearing area so you can get an idea what it should look like. Let me rotate the motor here. Sorry, this is gonna be all over the place for a second. So let's look up this way. Let's see if we can see up this way, past that rod. It's so dark though, hang on. Hard to show it, but there's the cam up there. Hold on, we're doing circles here. Trying to show you. Focus up. There's the cam. You cannot see the cam bearing protruding at all. Excuse me, got a cough all of a sudden. The cam bearing should be squarely between the block and not exposed, pushing out left or right from the main. So it's right in line with the main of the block, but that cam bearing there, as you can see, geez, has decided to come out. And this block may be junk, may or may not be junk, depending if that cam bearing spins, okay? And what that means is, if the cam bearing actually, as you turn the crank, spins and it's destroyed the bore in the block. If that's the case, it's pretty tough to get a machine shop that wants to touch it to refinish that. In this case, I don't think it's spun. I've turned the motor over and it doesn't spin with the cam, but I think it's just walked out, okay? And why these LSs have cam bearings that walk, I'm not positive. But they use a cam bearing that has a seam in it. Has a little U-shaped seam in it, and I don't like those. The Durabond one-piece single cam bearings always do a better job. And so we're gonna end up probably pulling this block and putting a all new set of cam bearings in it. It's a real big pain in the butt, but that's what we gotta do. I think I'm actually upside down now. Sorry, guys. But so again, low oil pressure. If you hear a scraping, scuffing noise inside there, you may wanna drop the pan, turn the motor over to be able to see all the different compartments up to the cam bearing, see if you have a cam bearing that's come out, walked out. And if you see that you know that's the core of your problem. Hope this has helped. I know this is not very coordinated. It's hard to do this with just myself here and show you guys the video and the content that I like to upload. But anyway, this is a big issue on LS's, oil pressure issues, and there's some definite things you can do to resolve them. But hope this has helped. Like I said, don't forget to check the O-ring on the pickup tube. The O-ring can be cracked and allowing air to come in. A lot of people think they have bad lifters, and it's really air getting taken into the motor, and when air hits the lifters, they collapse. Just like it breaks with air in the fluid. In the brake lines, your pedal go to the floor, the lifters collapse, and you think you have a bad lifter. Well, really, it's just a bad O-ring on the pickup tube, and you might get a low oil pressure notice when you first start it in the morning. Basically, it has to prime it every time you start it. So anyway, that's just a thought. Enjoy, guys. Hope this helps. Okay, this is the engine removed from our 2005 Silverado 2500 HD. And we've removed this due to low oil pressure. And this is going to be part of a video of several segments of why LSs lose their oil pressure. What's the deal? So I've stripped this entire motor down. And as you recall in a previous clip, you were able to see that cam bearing there. But at any rate, we've got it all torn down now, and you can see now that cam bearing, it's pretty dark in here, is quite far out. And we're gonna carefully remove the cam and see if it moves with it, or if it's, and then inspect the oiling hole and see if it's uncovered. And if that oiling hole is uncovered on this side, and it's just allowing oil pressure to dump out of that recess there. That's what I suspect. We'll find out. Okay, as I just started freely moving this cam out without any force at all, this cam bearing that we identified here just walked right out. This block may be trash. We're gonna have to see if a new cam bearing will actually crush in there, but this cam bearing just came right out. So that tells me that that's our oil pressure leak right there, in that hole there. Okay, we successfully removed the cam bearing, and the only way to get it out was to separate the cam bearing. And these are just two. This is not a two-piece, but it's made out of one piece. But you can see how they section it together here. This is a GM cam bearing, because you can see that's the OEM GM right there. If you look carefully at it here, it doesn't look awful. The inside's a little bit roughed up. We're gonna see if we can polish that cam there. This is the second journal here. You can see how the journal should be. Second journal, a little screwed up right here. We're gonna put this in a crankshaft polisher or grinding machine, and we'll polish that, and we'll see what the spec is. If it's only 1,000th less than these, I'm okay to use that again. But this is a big problem here. Let me explain this. This is the manufactured cam bearing that is rolled out of a flat piece of metal, and it's obviously punched, and then these are mated together, and that makes your cam bearing. And when they drive it in, there's a slight bit of crush on these, okay? Now you can see down in here, the other cam bearings are still happily where they should be. That's in, that's in, that's in, whoa, and then that's in. But I want you to notice, you can actually see the marking in there where it's supposed to ride. In this one, this cam bearing walked out. Simply didn't have the crush and walked out. Now it spun a little bit, but I'm optimistic in that you can still, I don't know if it'll show up on the video, but you can see the machining grooves still. It doesn't show a lot of signs of spinning and chewing up the block. So I'm confident that when we get the new Durabond one-piece cam bearings, and that's what I like about the Durabond cam bearings, they're one piece and they don't have this seam here. And I think they're a much better cam bearing than anything GM came out with. So these will all get knocked out. We'll put all new Durabonds in. You can even Loctite them in, a locking compound. Some people go as far as actually staking them. Well, not staking them, but they'll drill through the valley from up top and tap and put a grub screw that doesn't protrude past the actual cam bearing, and that locks it in place. I don't go that far. I haven't had any issues once I switched over to the Durabond one-piece cam bearings. But anyway, what I want you to see here, and this is a big deal. If you notice, I'm gonna come down here. Who knows what the camera's doing at this point? Let's see if this will focus. You can see that is the oiling port. That's the only, it's a big slit in that tunnel right in the middle. And that is oil pressure right to the lifter galley, okay? So if you look here, there's our lifter galleys up there with our lifters ride. But alongside in here is an oil galley and an oil galley. And what is happening is that groove is machined into the oil galley. That's where it gets its pressure for the cam bearing. So when this cam bearing walks out as far as it did, this cam bearing is a fraction of the size of that boss there. So as this cam bearing walked out and we saw how much it was exposed, what essentially happened is this oiling hole here is supposed to be over, and you can actually see the markings here. This is supposed to seal off that oil galley, and then oil is pumped through that hole there to oil the bearing and the camshaft. But as this comes out, walks this side, then it uncovers, it was actually this way, it actually uncovers the oil galley on this side as the cam bearing walks out of the block. And then you have a free-flowing massive hole that can't keep oil pressure. So once you've exposed that hole, the oil pressure drops in the entire engine, and it's like severing an artery in your leg per se, and you'd lose all kinds of blood pressure because your heart, you need restriction. The rule of any pressure, air pressure, read air pressure, water pressure, oil pressure, what dictates pressure is restriction. So this provides a restriction over that port and only gives it that big of a size to feed. And then also there's a very tight fitting cam in here and a journal on the cam. So there's only a couple thousandths of room for oil to float around in here. We push that out, we've opened a massive hole, and now the oil pump cannot maintain pressure in the engine because there's a big hole. And so that's the thing, you know, you think about it, you have pressure in any vessel and you rupture or cut a hole in it, and that pressure is gonna deplete, go down. So that's what's happened here. So we'll talk about some other issues that we have with LSs that we suspect sometimes first. One being the oil pump here that goes on the front of the engine in this area here. But there's also an issue with the relief valve in the oil pump getting stuck. And what we can talk about there, and maybe I've shown it in another clip, this is a stock oil pump here. This is what came out of this one here. And in this assembly here is your relief valve. And that relief valve, when oil is thick and cold in the morning and you start your vehicle, there's gonna be a lot of pressure. And so this relief valve will open at a certain designated pressure and allow some of the high pressure oil to recirculate back to the inlet side of the pump. And as the oil thins out, there's less restriction because of viscosity. Thicker viscosity takes more pressure to move. And so as that viscosity thins with heat, the oil flows easier and there's less restriction, and therefore the pressure will go down, and then this should reseat. This would reseat and not allow any oil to go to the recirc side. What can happen between those heat cycles is this valve gets worked a lot, and eventually one cold morning, you'll start it, the pressure goes up, it opens the valve to recirculate it. As the engine oil heats up, this valve gets stuck and it doesn't go back all the way on the spring pressure. And when that happens, well, then you're recirculating hot, thin oil to the pump and your engine starves. So that's a GM issue. We've known with some of the GM pumps that'll do that. We switched to a Melling pump, which seems to be a revised, better design. And GM's newer pumps are better too. But at any rate, even with 5 pounds of oil pressure, I want you to take note, this will focus, of the condition of our main bearings. Even with 5 pounds of oil pressure, they look brand new. And so you can not have them look brand new if you just drive the hell out of it with no oil pressure. It will beat these to crap, and then you'll have rod knock as well. The mains are fed first through here, and this goes up to the same galleys we were talking about, but the crank is immaculate on this. And so what that tells me is when the oil pressure was low, the customer didn't put a lot of load on it, didn't drive it too hard. But here's our mains on the crank, and this is dirt or just film, but all these are perfect. There's no marks whatsoever. That's a perfect crank. Don't even need to polish it. I can slap it right back in. But at any rate, I'm happy that that cam bearing did not chew up the bore, and I think it'll go in great. At the worst case scenario, I'm into the cam, whoop-de-freaking do. If that doesn't clean up and I can't reuse that camshaft, I can get another LQ9 cam, or LQ4 cam, I should say. This is a 2005 LQ4, and what a lot of people don't realize is an 05, even though this is a Gen 3, this is still a Gen 3 motor. And how do we know it's a Gen 3? Because it doesn't have the oiling towers for the DOD on the later models 07 and up. This is a Gen 3 6-liter block, but this is, it has all the short bolts, they're all matched. The early Gen 3 blocks had different length bolts on the end for the head bolts, but this is like an 03 and up block. But what that tells me, it's a Gen 3 block, but it was fitted with the upgraded full floating wrist pins. Being that it's an 05, you get the full floating pin, and you can tell the full floating pin when you look at the pin and you see the circlip that holds it in, just like on a motorcycle engine. There's a circlip there. Coated pistons, okay? You get the coated skirts. These are dished, so this you can tell that's, and by the way, I just took a brush to knock the carbon off. That's what those little light scratches are. But anyway, this is the, this is a coated Teflon type material on the piston. And then also the dimple rods. This is the giveaway. They're a cracked cap where you cannot see the seam, the parting line. It's pretty tough to see. You don't want to be able to see a parting line. And on these, you really can't. Actually, I can see the parting line right there. This is probably because I have this side torqued more, but I can't find the parting line here. But at any rate, dimple rods, Gen 4 rods, these are the ones that guys are pushing up to 1,000 horsepower. I would never push a rod like this to 1,000 horsepower. I think they're probably good for safe for 600-700. But anyway, pretty cool that the Gen 3, even though it's a Gen 3 with a 24 tooth reluctor, 05, 06 and up until they went to the 58, everything 05 and up had the Gen 4 stuff, the Gen 4 rods, pistons, skirts. But pretty cool that the Gen 3 still got these early. Now, to know your facts, the first engine that got these Gen 4s was all the way back in 02, and that was the Cadillac Escalade 6.0. And that was even though it was a Gen 3, it got these rods. So these rods were developed originally for Cadillac, for just exclusively for that 6-liter, and then they evolved into everything else. So you won't find anything in 02 that's got those rods. You can't get them in the Denalis. The Denalis did not get the LQ9, they got the LQ4. And so you had to get the LQ9, which is only available on a Cadillac Escalade, that would give you those rods in 02. A little fun facts for you. You always get a little extra with me. But anyway, we've got this block torn down all the way, and we are ready to take it down to the machine shop, knock all that stuff out, check the cylinder bores, make sure this has less than 100,000 miles. If the bores check out, we're gonna re-ring it and send it back down the road. But anyway, guys, that's it. And we'll talk more about some oil pressure issues. One other thing that is absolutely critical, if you have 0 oil pressure, you want to make sure if you've done any major work on your engine that you did not forget this plug. This plug is often referred to as a barbell, and it is vital in separating these two holes here. And these two holes are the active high pressure circuits, oil circuits that go into the oil pan that feed the oil cooler lines and the oil filter. So what you essentially have, if you notice on the block here, you can see the block's casting. You can see these two holes going up here. Well, what is this? So you have two drilled holes that go down this way, and you have one drilled hole that goes all the way from the back of the block to the front of the block. How that works is your oil pump bolts on right here. As you know, it picks up oil from the pickup tube, comes here, goes into the O-ring. The O-ring in the pickup tube goes into the oil pump. And I want to show you this. This is another big culprit. Let's talk about this. Here is your O-ring on your pickup tube, okay? Now this one still appears to be in pretty good shape, but I'm gonna show you the symptom of a bad O-ring. If you start your vehicle in the morning and you get a low oil pressure immediately, if you get a warning light saying low oil pressure and then it comes up, that's an indication of a bad O-ring. Let me explain why. Well, let's go back. I put it away, let's go back to it. This O-ring here does a very critical thing. It seals into the oil pump, and we're gonna show you here. This is, most of you are going, hey, I already know this, but let's hear me out here. That's gotta keep a perfect seal into that port there. Why is that critical? Because when you shut your vehicle off at night, this entire passageway is full of oil all the way down into the sump. There is oil continuously. Well, if this O-ring gets old, which they do, and they get hard, and they will crack sometimes they don't crack. Sometimes they shrink a little bit. That'll allow air to slip in past that O-ring at this connection here. You'll get air going through there, and if air gets, so what's important to note is this connection here is out of the oil. It is in the air in the motor. It's not bathed in oil. The oil level is lower, okay? So this is completely submerged here, up here, but that is out in the air. So if that O-ring deteriorates and air can get into that, it allows the prime of the engine to drop all of its oil back out. And this is dry every time you start it in the morning. So you start it immediately and that pump has to reprime itself, okay? So it's got to pull all the way back up through here, prime the engine, and that's when the noisy lifters will start quieting down and you're back in business. Now, here's another trick to this. So that's the bad O-ring that I want you to know about. But the other culprit of a bad O-ring, which people will blame another part for, is, I'm getting to it, this right here. Do any of you have a 5.3, 4.8 Silverado that's got a bad lifter? You swear it has a bad lifter. Well, let's talk about this. I'm willing to bet you don't have a bad lifter. I have seen a couple over my lifetime, but not many. If you have a lifter that's going tick, 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 and it's not an exhaust leak, and you're sure it's a lifter, let's talk about it. It's probably not a lifter. So I bought a 2004 Silverado 2500 HD from a friend who said, I don't want this, it's got a bad lifter, it's gonna be a lot of work. I bought it, I dropped the oil pan, I dropped the front cover, I pulled the harmonic bouncer off, all that, I put a new oil pump in it, and I put a new O-ring in doing that as well. Obviously you put a new O-ring when you put a new oil pump in. You don't even have to do new oil pump a lot of times, you can just put an O-ring in if the oil pump is still good, but because of the issues that I told you about with the plunger sticking, I put a new oil pump in. So what did that do? And that cured the car. No more lifter tick. Let's talk about that. So a lifter tick, let's talk about this hydraulic lifter. This is a body on the outside. It has a perfectly machined hole, and there's a plunger in here. Hydraulic oil, engine oil, under pressure from the oil pump, enters through the oil galleys, goes through this hole here, and pressurizes the lifter. And the lifter will pump up. It's a hydraulic lifter. It takes all the lash out of the valve train for you. But that's only if there's solid oil underneath the plunger. What happens with the O-ring is even when you get your prime back and it's pumping oil, it's still sucking a little bit of air. Well, what does that mean? That air goes into the system. Now you have aerated oil, which no one wants. You want fully, no air in your oil is all I'm trying to say, okay? Well, let's think of this another way. Do you want air in your brakes? Think about that correlation. What happens if you have air in your brakes? You have a spongy pedal. Let's think of this as the pedal. You step on the pedal, the brake pedal, you have no brakes, and this goes down. That's what happens in a master cylinder that has air in it, or any of the brake lines. So air will get introduced up here on a bad O-ring, gets pumped into the oil. The oil is aerated, oil goes into this here, and air will actually get trapped in here, and then this plunger has air underneath it, and it's gonna constantly be tapping itself. It's not gonna stay pumped up. It's not gonna pump up. It's gonna tap, 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 tap. And a lot of people think it's a bad lifter. It is not. 99% of the time, you put a new O-ring in, and the O-rings are readily available. They're just this right here. The trucks a lot of times use green or red ones. This is a brand new red O-ring for an oil pump. But if you notice, the pumps, when you pull them out, they're all squared off, and then they start cracking, and they're really brittle. So that's the problem. First thing I would tell you guys to do, if you want to check, if you're trying to decide or figure out your oil, low oil pressure issue, drop the pan. It's a pain in the butt, drop the pan. Why do I tell you that? Because you got to drop the pan anyway to do an O-ring. So that's the easiest thing. You can drop the pan, and then when the pan's off, you can undo the windage tray right here. There's 10 bolts on the windage tray. A lot of people don't know this, but this is the windage tray. This thing here, 10 bolts. It hangs on the main caps. You're not undoing the main caps when you do it. You're just taking off the nuts that go onto the main caps. Drop that down. What does that allow you to do? It allows you to see up here, like in the other segment I did, and you can carefully rotate the crankshaft to find different angles to see if you have any cam bearings that are walking or moving or wiggling out. And you can also have a buddy rotate the crankshaft, and you can see if any cam bearings are moving or spinning. Anything that's out of normal, you can check that. Once you get the thumbs up on that, and you're like, woo, no cam bearings are bad, you can put the tray back on, the windage tray, lock it down, move on, remove your harmonic balancer, take that off, take off the water pump obviously to get to the front cover off, undo the front cover, pull that off. Now you can undo your oil pump, slide that off with the dip, the tube, take the pickup tube off, put a new oil pump on, new O-ring, you're good. And your lifter tick will go away, your low oil pressure in the morning will stop doing that when it's ticking in the morning. Anyway, guys, this is a long video, I know that, but I want you guys to know that I have gone through hundreds of LS motors, and I have learned the tricks of what is causing these oil leaks, okay? Now, obviously, if you run an engine with low oil pressure for a long time, you're gonna wear out the main bearings, and then you have a whole nother can of worms. You won't ever be able to maintain oil pressure, because once the main bearings are gone or the rod bearings are gone, you don't have a tight seal, and it's gonna never have good oil pressure. Get to this stuff first before it starts wiping everything out. This is still good. It's a big problem. Obviously, I had to pull the whole motor out, strip it all the way down to address this. I'm gonna take it to the machine shop, have that and do that stuff. But now we can save this engine and it'll be as good as new. Now I wanna go back to this oil galley. So your pickup tube picks up here, goes to the oil pump pressurizes into this port here, right there. That is your high pressure oil for the entire engine, okay? This port here goes in, it goes this way. This is drilled, this is a plug for the hole they've drilled this way, but that connects this long passageway here. Right here it is, right? Sorry, I'm not doing a good job showing you guys. Right here. Got the phone all twisted and everything else. And this is actually the hole where they drill it, right here, this plug. And you can see this plug here, that's what seals it off. So oil pressure goes in through there, goes this way. And this is just, this hole's here for when they drill it and machine it, and then they have to plug it. But they connect it here with, when they machine this one here. So it goes that way, connects this way. So you got high pressure oil coming this way. And then you have this little plug back there that goes in, and it has a little plunger that stops right here. So it forces the oil to go this way. Goes through the filter, all the circuits, comes back this way, and it can go back. Now the way it does this here is it has a little skinny, it's called a dog bone. A lot of guys call it a dog bone, but it has a little skinny stem, and then it has a big plug here. So when oil comes back through here, it's going around the stem, but it still can't get out of the block. If you leave this out, it can. It'll just dump right back into the rear cover and into the pan. You have no oil pressure without this. But from here, it forces it up the oil galley that you can see right here. and that oil galley goes up into the rear cover, and oh, sorry, it's not focusing. The rear cover will then distribute it to these two plugs via the rear cover that is sealed. And then that feeds those two main galleys that go back way, that way. They feed the lifters, feed the mains, feed everything. Understanding the oiling circuits of the LS is important to track down what you're trying to fix. And it's not rocket science. You got to take some time, but find what's causing your leak, what's allowing air into the motor, into the oil, and you'll be a happy camper. I hope this has been helpful for you guys. I'm going to try to start making some more informative videos on things that are problematic with LSs and other things that are tips and tricks, basically, you can do with these motors. So like and subscribe if this helped you, and leave any comments and I'll get back to you. If you need to ask any questions, I can help you out. One other quick thing, these are your coolant drains on each side. There, and there's one here. That drains the block on each side. And this is another oil galley plug here that they use to drill all the way up. They use their machining to drill all the way up there through the block. So anyway, guys, enjoy. Okay, this is our block back from the machine shop that spun the cam bearing. Here's the old cam bearing here. And I want you to notice the width of the new cam bearings is substantially more. There's quite a bit. They use almost the entire bulkhead here, a lot of it, or the entire width of the journal there. So you get a lot more bite into the block. Also, these are one-piece Durabond cam bearings. So they're not gonna move, way better. Anyway, it is blue. We painted it with what we had in the shop. It's just the customers. I don't really care if it's black or blue, Ford blue, whatever. But it's, I just wanted you guys, it was this cam bearing here that spun on us here. And we are able to salvage the old camshaft too. This is my boy, Owen. And go ahead and grab that cam bearing, son. So this was the, nope, it was the second one up here. This was the journal here that spun, and they put it in their crankshaft polishing machine and they polished it down, and we're a few 10,000ths less of what it should be from these others. So totally fine to use it again, and we're back in business here. So cam bearings are in, and we'll start putting this together and have it up and running in a few days. Back in the truck. Yeehaw. Here we have our 05 or 06, I can't remember what it is, 6 liter out of our CNG 2500. And we have obviously got the block back from the machine shop. We've painted it a color that's non-traditional for a GM block, but that's to denote the CNG, the blue. Anyway, that's just a joke, by the way. We've got our crank in and our caps torqued. New bearings, and we've set our end play on the crank. We've got about 5,000 end play back and forth. Set our timing, dropped our cam in, and you can see the cam down there now. And now you can actually take a look, and if you recall, previously, the cam bearing that walked out on the second main bearing, or did I say the main bearing, the second main journal. Let's turn this crank so we can get there. It's still pretty tricky to see down in there, but now we can. If we can get. Yeah, it's pretty tough to see with the lighting. I need to get a light down there. But at any rate, these cam bearings are a lot wider, and they take up almost the whole width of this. What essentially is this same sectional width down there on the cam bulkhead. So a lot more support in the block, one piece cam bearing, not worried about it coming out anymore. Oil pressure should be bueno. So again, we got both shafts in, torqued, put in place. Now it's time to drop some new piston rings and pistons back in these fresh bores. And we'll get that going. Okay, in adding to my low oil pressure lineup, this series of clips that I'm going to be adding together to share with you, You can see that's the truck, the natural gas 6 liter back there that I'm completely rebuilding with wider cam bearings, and everything's great on that. So here we have like an 05 or 06 Denali, which always, if you know, came with the 6.0, the OQ4 with the 4L65 transmission, a variant of the 4L60. So again, 5 pounds oil pressure. First step, pull the pan, then pull the windage tray, which you can see the windage tray is sitting in the oil pan right there. And 2 seconds later, you can see, let's see if I can zoom in again for you guys. Same exact thing. Sucks. This cam bearing, if it'll focus. Sorry guys, it's really tough to get a shot of it here, but we're gonna get it. You can see it there, maybe. And you can see that black thing next to the cam lobe. That's all pushed out of the block. That's it. There we go, that's a better look at it. It's focused. There it is. Same exact thing. Cam bearing number 2 pushed out. Shitty GM narrow cam bearings stamped. And they suck. What can I say? I thought this one was gonna be an oil pump. I was wrong. Another cam bearing, same exact thing. Frickin' sucks. Because now this customer is, you know, they got brand new tires on this thing. It's a good Denali. It's 150 or so, 1,000 miles on it. But what do? Zoom out. It's a really good looking rig. It's worthless. The vehicle's worthless as it is. Yeah, it's a worthless vehicle with a motor that makes no oil pressure. But to do this over here, to build up a motor, it's a lot of money. I don't think they want to spend that, but we'll find out. So I have a whole nother block at home if that block's trashed. But it actually looked like that one was burned up a lot more. So again, what you were seeing, that here's the cam bearing that came out of this one, and that's the side you're seeing hanging out up there. It's a shame. I love LS engines, but I hate some of the stupid things GM did just to cut corners. There's so much better stuff you can put in them. But at any rate, we'll see where we're gonna go with it. Hey guys, I hope this video has helped you somewhat to kind of explore the different possibilities that could be your low oil pressure or no oil pressure condition in your LS engine. This is basically what I look for every time. I kind of go through this here, and I usually find one of these 4 to 5 things that is causing my issue. Now, the last vehicle you saw, which was the 05 Denali, I believe, with the 6 liter, customer did actually decide to fix that. We pulled that engine out, did the exact same thing we did to the truck. The engine was painted blue, exact same thing. New cam bearings. The cam bearings went in fine. So I'm finding with iron blocks, the cam bearings typically will press back in when you go to the one-piece Durabond cam bearing, and they work very well. And I've had 0 issues with them coming out again. Aluminum blocks, a little different. Sometimes when they spin, they chew up the block too much and they won't hold a cam bearing again. So I've had bad luck with aluminum blocks, but most iron blocks I've had 0 issues with. But anyway, I hope this has helped you guys. Leave any comments, I'll answer any questions. I know I'm long-winded in these videos and they're not as well done as they should have been. I'm going to try to start doing better jobs with them and actually not making them so long-winded. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it helps you with your engine. It does take a lot of work to pull these engines out to save a cam bearing failure if you find that happens to you, but it's well worth it. They come back to life just fine as long as you catch them before the cam bearing being out too long causes other issues like rod knocks and things like that. So the only thing that's lame is you really got to pull the whole engine down bare block to get cam bearings reinstalled. It's just the way it's done. But it gives you an opportunity to inspect the rest of the motor, clean it up, rebuild it, put new bearings in it. And on both of these motors, I did not have to grind the crank. We caught it. It only had about 5 pounds of oil pressure on each vehicle, but we were able to just polish the crank, put it back in, and we're good to go. We were good. But anyway, enjoy guys, and let me know what your experiences are, what you find, and if this video helps you at all. Ask any questions. I'll get back to you on it. Thanks. Bye.